With this interesting performance, there are a lot of different things I can talk about, but I'll try and keep everything brief because that's my style and that's what I prefer. When I heard Shakur's left hand was hurt, I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense because he didn't throw any left hands except for short ones in the clinch, and then he threw some in the 12th round. And then some responses in the post-fight interview also made me think his left hand probably was hurt. He got asked if his left hand was hurt, and his response basically boiled down to, I can neither confirm nor deny. Basically, he wasn't trying to make any excuses. And if your left hand wasn't hurt, you would just say, no, it's not hurt. So that's probably the biggest reason why I'm like, oh yeah. And then he was also talking about slowing down in the gym and stuff like that. But this fight kind of reminded me of, at times it reminded me of the Tank Davis 12th round against Isaac Cruz, where it was just jabs and lead hooks, basically, and footwork and defense, head movement, all of that. And although that 12th round was far more entertaining because Cruz was willing to come forward and fight while Santos was not most of the time, it takes two fighters to make a boring fight. This is an important point because most people are going to blame this on Shakur or they're going to blame it on Santos. If you're a Shakur supporter, you're going to blame it on Santos. If you're a hater or if you're a hater of Shakur, or if you believe in the underdog type stuff, then you're going to blame it on Shakur. So it takes two fighters to make a boring fight. Shakur constantly jumping back and only staying in range to exchange for a couple of minutes out of the 36 minutes. Really, it was like a few rounds. It was like some of those later rounds, like 8, 9, something like that, like those later rounds. Shakur normally in those first couple rounds is jumping back a lot, resetting, trying to find reads on timing. And then after a round or two, he stops jumping back and only starts stepping back. And then he stops stepping back and he only starts leaning back. Basically, he finds his range, he sits in the pocket, and then you start seeing him get more violent. And that's the point I'm trying to talk about next, because fans have a right to be disappointed. Here's what everyone needs to realize about combat sports. It's all about damage. Damage leading to the end of the fight, which is normally coming in the form of concussive force in boxing. So even if it's boring in terms of a lack of activity, it can be entertaining and keep you on the edge of your seat because you know at any moment things could end. That's why you can watch a Deontay Wilder fight and he won't throw but 3 punches for 7 rounds, but you're on the edge of your seat. Or Tank Davis, the same kind of thing. If you watch a lot of Tank fights, they get boring early on because he's moving around being defensive. He's not really opening up, and his opponent doesn't want to open up because they don't want to get knocked out. But those fights aren't boring because there's always that keeping you on the edge of your seat factor. Here it's different because neither of these men are. But there's power and they can hurt each other. But here's the important part that separates a boring fighter from an entertaining fighter. It's the intention. Neither of these men had the intention to really go after and hurt each other. And when they did, the other man didn't want to engage. So when Santos was trying to chase down Shakur was, escaping and moving around. And we'll talk about that later. And then when Shakur was walking down Santos wouldn't engage and give Shakur anything to work with. And Shakur was jabbing him and all that, but Santos didn't want to open up. So neither of these men were really committed to damage, but Shakur was sitting down on more combinations later on than Santos. Santos had like a few double jab combinations, but he didn't really throw many combinations. Shakur's the popular one here, so he's the one that's supposed to win and dominate and all that, so he's gonna get more hate, which he already knows. We already know how this works. And he acknowledged that himself this was a bad performance. So don't think I'm defending this performance. I think it was a bad performance. A lot of the fans are gonna say it's a bad performance. Shakur thinks it's a bad performance. And then later on we're gonna address the people that call people casuals for thinking this type of fight is boring. Bad night for both men, but you move on and do better next time. One of the best things about this, though, and I will give Shakur credit, this is one of the best and most insane defensive performances I've ever seen, because somebody with the speed of Santos, and this is why Shakur had trouble opening up early on. The foot speed and hand speed of Santos was it was superior to I think anything he's ever faced with, and that gave him a lot of trouble with his reflexes and his timing. And so, but despite that, Shakur made him miss almost everything. But I'll end it this way. I'll say this. By the way, like and subscribe. Shakur, whether he was injured or not, primarily won this fight with one hand. People are going to be less hype about this performance, which is fair. They're going to be less hype on Shakur after this performance. But I want to counter the narrative. When people say that fights like this aren't boring unless you're a casual, the reason why I talked about the anatomy of a boring fight earlier is because I can acknowledge the nuance involved in the fact that this was a boring fight. To me, it had some interesting dynamics. But generally, people don't come to watch boxers dodge, duck, dip, and dive. This isn't dodgeball. They come to watch boxers throw punches and land punches. That's why the most important scoring criteria is hard and clean punches. That's what determines the outcome of fights. And that's also what determines how people think of you. I don't think Shakur is generally a boring fighter. I think Shakur, to me, he's very entertaining. And I don't think Los Santos is a boring fighter, but styles make fights. And tonight, Santos didn't want to get through Shakur's jab, and Shakur didn't want to let go of his left hand and stay in front of Santos early on. But this is boxing, and if you're a boxing fan, there's always more boxing matches, and if you're a fan of combat sports, there's always way more fights out there. So you just move on to the next, and then yeah, that's what we do. So tell me your thoughts. Tell me your thoughts about this and everything going on, and I might do a quick analysis if people ask for it. I believe that is all. Fights and Science, Immortality Serum out.